what happens in difficult conversations when you have to speak to someone, assuming that there's nothing wrong with that person, but for some reason, how do you approach that conversation? You don't want to be aggressive towards the person. You want to understand what's going on.
There's that level of avoidance, which I think is natural. But yeah, if you look at it from the perspective of how is it affecting the people around them, the other members of the team, the company culture, avoiding addressing those problems is actually having a larger negative impact than you sitting down and having that conversation.
Let's say it could be like a health issues and so on. That's a different kind of help you need to offer to the person versus someone who is not performing well because, well, they don't feel excitement with the job anymore.
Hi everyone, I'm Jason Balara and this is the Know Your Why podcast. Today I'm here with Dalmo Cirne, the author of 4 Streams of Leadership and a professional with 3 decades of accumulated experience in leadership, management, technology, and mathematics. Dalmo, like I said, I really think these are much more interesting to hear it from your words. So first though, thank you for being on the show today. Thanks for taking out the time to come and chat with me. I'm really excited for the conversation.
Oh, I'm super excited for this conversation, Jason. It's great to be here. It's my pleasure.
Awesome. Well, I know we're both dads based on some of the things behind us, but let's hear a bit about your background and kind of what brought you to where you are today.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of being a dad, that's where you really join the human race. That's when you receive the welcome card. Hey, you are welcome now into the human race. It changes you as a person. It is perhaps the most significant day of my life is when my kids were born. Yeah. And if you have well, you already definitely have a family, but people listening to the conversation, if they have plans to build a family and start coming up and having kids, that is the most wonderful thing that could ever happen to a person.
Agreed.
And the story behind this book is about a decade in the making, right? Can you imagine how many people are prepared to step into a position of leadership, right? We don't have to come up with an exact number, but do you have any clue, any idea? If you had to guess, what would you say?
Oh, man. I mean, across that leadership can mean so many different things, but I do think almost all of us get some opportunity to step into some level of leadership role in our lives. So I feel like it could be pretty widespread.
It is. And we don't have to imagine or too far to know that number is very small. The people who actually step into the position of leadership for the first time, they mostly feel like a fish out of the water. Mm-hmm. So no one has an exact number, but we all instinctively know that number is very, very small. There's an interesting story from Lawrence Peter. You may know him better by the Peter Principle. So it became a famous book he published in 1969. And I don't want to not make justice to the book. It's actually an excellent book. But the gist of it, I'm oversimplifying over here, is that you spend your career until you get to a level where you find how incompetent you are. You get promoted to your highest level of incompetence. And I'm arguing otherwise, that you don't get to a level of incompetence. You don't spend your whole life being competent only to wake up one day and figure out, oh, I'm incompetent. No. You are unprepared. That's a better description. You say, hey, I landed in a position over here where I don't know what I'm supposed to do. What are the expectations? What are my deliverables? What am I supposed to be doing over here? It is not like I know my craft and I just need to apply at a different scale. Not at all. There's so much more to be done. Um, but if you land and you are unprepared, that's where the Peter principle comes, and the argument I'm making that it is not that. There's an entire universe of things that you can do and you can learn to land into that leadership position and be ready to do the job, right? I think that is the best we can do. And that's where the four streams of leadership comes in.
Okay. So if in fact the problem is preparedness, I definitely want to hear about kind of, how you, the overarching question, of course, is going to be, well, how do you get prepared for that? But my sort of lead-in question to that is, do you think that the people that get in that position do they know that they're going to be unprepared? Like, I'm not sure I'm asking the question well, but how do you have your observations shown like that process, right? So if you're continuing to be promoted along whatever track you're on, and then at some point you reach that level of unpreparedness, what are there warning signs or ways to avoid getting to that point?
Yeah, well, I was unprepared. And I know many who stepped into that position and were unprepared as well. There are those who either are born with a gift of being prepared or studied ahead of time and kind of know what expectations are, what the job entails, what you're supposed to do. And that's about as good as it gets in getting prepared, is learning what lies ahead of you, what are you supposed to be doing. If you are a great professional, whichever your area is, and you know your skills, your craft, and you do that well, once you step into a position of leadership, it is different than doing that more. For example, what are you supposed to be doing with your upstream management? What kind of conversations do you have with them? How do you plan ahead? How do you do an analysis of a project to identify here are strengths of this project, here are weaknesses, and here how we can address those things? Or me or someone on my team have an idea that would be a great project. How do we get buy-in into that, right? Working with people, for example, if you have a product that needs to be compliant with some regulations, how do you know if it's compliant? If not by working with someone on the legal team, for example, right? There's the product manager. There's a series of those unknowns as you step into that position, but just becoming aware of what they are and seeing a few examples of what to do in those situations, that puts you in a position that you are ahead of 99% of everyone else.
Yeah. It is preparedness. I mean, is a huge factor. What do you have? Maybe this is the best way to ask it. Do you have examples? I know you said that you were unprepared. Do you have an example that you could share with us of maybe a scenario where someone fell into a leadership role, were not prepared, and what you might have done to help them prepare for that position, to help them kind of hit that role with a little bit more preparedness and success?
Absolutely. Let's hear a scenario that's somewhat common. Is one of the areas you're going to be managing is your team. You will be in part responsible for assembling your team and also managing them over time. What happens in difficult conversations when you have to speak to someone, assuming that there's nothing wrong with that person, but for some reason they are not performing at the level expected? Perhaps they were before and they're no longer right now, or they were never performing at the level that was expected from them. How do you approach that conversation? You don't want to be aggressive towards the person. You want to understand what's going on, and you want to figure out, is it a situation where it's solvable, or is it a situation where we need to part ways, right? Having those tough conversations, and it's not cannot be offensive to either side, because you have your job to do and the person has responsibilities they need to match. So those kinds of conversations are an important aspect of it. And how do you address them? How do you follow up in written format? So those are things absolutely important to do on managing your team. And the fundamental reason for that is it's not even the company in itself, even though that is an important part, but you have to be fair to everyone else on the team. If you're not addressing those situations, how is it fair to everyone else on the team who are performing at the level that is expected from them? They're working hard and doing things, right? If you allow someone who is not performing at their level, the expectations, how can you look at the eyes of people, the other people on the team, and manage them and say, oh, if so and so can do it, why can't I? And now you have a disaster happening, right? You have a situation that it's very uncomfortable to manage. It's much, much worse than having those conversations.
Are you planning a remodel or construction project? Overwhelmed by the process? Over budget? Extended timelines? Strained relationships? We are all too familiar. At Lark Construction Services, we help homeowners and business owners take control of their construction journey, from reviewing bids and contracts to catching red flags before they become costly mistakes. Our Clarity Audit is a one-on-one expert review of your plans, estimates, or current progress, giving you the peace of mind and a defined action plan to move forward with confidence. Don't let confusion lead to costly errors. Visit larkconstruction.com and schedule your free call today. Lark Construction Services, saving you time, money, and stress.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point, and I don't know that I've ever really thought about it that way. I mean, people don't like to have those difficult conversations. You sort of, I feel like the instinct or the kind of the norm is to avoid them. Say, oh well, person's not doing everything they should. I probably need to talk to them, but I'll get around to it, when I get around to it, kind of thing. It's like there's that level of avoidance, which I think is natural. But yeah, if you look at it from the perspective of how is it affecting the people around them, the other members of the team, the company culture, avoiding addressing those problems is actually having a larger negative impact than you sitting down and having that conversation. I mean, it may not have a larger negative impact on your specific day that day, but overall certainly could create a bit of a snowball effect in terms of company culture. So I think that's a fantastic point. And I don't remember the exact quote, but I know that I've heard people talk about, you get as a CEO, you get paid, you're compensated for the level of problems that you solve. And so it's those difficult conversations are a large part of a leadership role. So how do we get better at them? How do we, if you just gave us sort of a very compelling argument as to why you need to make sure you go and do it, but how do you get better at that? How do you become someone who, you said, you don't want to be aggressive or confrontational, but sometimes people have feelings about what you might say to them. So do you have some tips on how to address those difficult conversations?
Yeah, not only tips, but specific examples. So one of the things in the book, I'm going to take a quick detour, but I'm coming back to your specific question. This is important to understand the bigger context. one of the things I saw in existing books on management and leadership, one, many of them are addressing the C-suite level. Not many of them were addressing those people who are transitioning into management or just started the job and is still trying to find their bearings. And some of the books, or actually many of the books, they come up with stories that are beautiful stories, but you can't connect the dots between those stories and your life and your examples. And you say, that was such a beautiful story, but what is in that for me? Mm-hmm. Right? And that is one frustrating element in those books of leadership. It comes up with this inspiring tale of someone who's doing something and ends up amounting to nothing. You love the story, you feel entertained, but at the end of the day, it made you feel good, but it amounted to nothing. So I avoided those falling into that trap on the book. Instead, what I'm providing are concrete examples. For instance, in the case of a difficult conversation like that, not only you want to have the conversation, but you want to follow up in written format. Then I simulate a conversation like that happening and the follow-up email. How we should write the email in a way that is respectful and so on. Going back to your question, it comes down to understanding the other side, right? You need to find a way to dig those answers from the person in a way that they understand what's going on, being transparent with them. Someone is not performing well, let's say, it could be like a health issues and so on. That's a different kind of help you need to offer to the person versus someone who is not performing well because, well, they don't feel excitement with the job anymore, right? If the person is not feeling excitement with the job and is not really giving their 100% and not there yet, that's when it becomes problematic and unfair to everyone else on the team. How do you get that from them and follow-up emails and so on? You either work in building that confidence and that excitement back, or eventually, and that is the last resort, is parting ways. It is very difficult. It's one of the most uncomfortable conversations and actions you have to take in a professional life, but it needs to be done. Right? You can't shy away from that responsibility. Another aspect that is people don't talk much about is the hierarchical nature of leadership. And there's a reason for that. It's not, it is my manager, it's hierarchical, but why? Right? In order to follow and to be legitimate leadership, people need to understand why. So one of the main elements why it is hierarchical is because some difficult decisions cannot be reached by consensus or cannot be reached in a committee. Mm-hmm. For example, let's imagine that a small bakery started and we're doing like cupcakes and whatnot. Grows, ends up switching to being a technology company. Now you're employing 200 people in the bakery baking cupcakes, but you're a technology company and you're not making money with the cupcakes, and you're developing technology. You need to invest in a new project. Now you don't have capital to invest because you're supporting that cupcake business, which was original to the company. It's a difficult decision. You have to either shut down, divest, sell to another company, right? There are a few options you can do over there, but pretty much it means that you have to part ways with the cupcake business. If you just sit together with people, the best in the human on us, right? It's going to come out and you're going to say, no, we have to keep the business. The cupcakes are so delicious. We love them. But
Yeah.
You can't invest in those because now you need to move that money to invest in a new project, and you can't because you're subsidizing the cupcakes. So that is one of the main reasons for that hierarchy in leadership. Of course, there are abuses. We have to have measures on preventing those abuses.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to make some of those very difficult decisions via committee. I think sometimes it gets, it makes the decision take too long, or just unable to reach a consensus. So I think that makes a ton of sense, what you're saying there. When you're, when people are having these difficult discussions, you mentioned, I think basically talking about empathy towards, whoever the receiver of that conversation is, and following up with emails. Do you feel like you have a particular, I guess, communication style that you think is best? Like, meaning, do you get on a Zoom with them? Are you having them in person? I'm sure some of it depends on if they're a remote employee versus what. But do you find that there are specific ways that are maybe these conversations are better received, or easier to kind of deliver maybe difficult news? What's your typical approach to that type of conversation?
Some people like to serve there's a funny name for that. We can get back to that later. But some people like to say something nice first, then speak what they came to speak, and then finish with something nice. Yeah. It's a kind of sandwich that they do. Yeah, right.
Like the compliment sandwich or something like that. I have actually heard that too. Yeah.
The problem with that is it is confusing, because you start with a praise or something nice, then you step into some tough or like uncomfortable territory in that conversation, and then you finish with something nice. Now it's confusing because you went through that roller coaster. I was like, is it good? Is it bad? Is it nice? Do I have to do something? Yeah. That only creates more confusion to the other person, but you have only done that because you wanted to feel better. So how is it even fair to that other person? My approach, and what I would recommend, is to be honest, right? To say, hey, we're here, we're talking about this. Once the person understands what it is, and the person knows you are coming from a good place, they will engage in the conversation as well, right? Because everyone, we want to find a solution for that situation. One, for them, it may not be sustainable, right? They may be, whatever the person is going through, it may not be sustainable for them. For you, have responsibility to the company, have responsibility to the rest of the team. Mm-hmm. Also not sustainable, right? Speaking about that honestly, head on, it is the best approach. Yeah. The person will know you mean well, you come from a good place, you're not there to waste their time. Mm-hmm. But I think that is the best approach.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that I agree that whatever you want to call it, that sandwich certainly leads for a confusing result. I mean, and potentially even more, maybe even more resentment if you go in and they're not even exactly sure, was this a good meeting or a difficult meeting, and then you follow it up with an email that says, hey, if you don't fix X, Y, and Z, you're fired. Like that. I think that there's the direct approach does make a ton more sense in terms of in just clarity, for both sides. Like, this is where the problem lies. This is what we want to try to do to address it. And here are the, sort of outcomes. One may be parting ways if not addressed.
Yeah. And the other aspect is to be specific, not to be vague and saying you are not performing well. That is too broad. You don't know, where I'm not performing well, but you can be very specific in saying, there was a project, and in that project, you were scoped to do features A, B, and C. We spoke about the timelines, and you agreed with those. Then either the features were not implemented correctly or not in the correct timeline.
Mm-hmm.
Ahead of time, you were not showing that we would pass the deadline or that you would not be able to conclude the project or implement the features. And then during the presentation, you didn't show up. All of those are specific examples that reflect the behavior of the person. That's where you bring to the conversation. You need to be very specific, because if they decide to own the problem and fix it, they will know exactly what to do, right? Instead of you being vague, because they would know, should I start learning rocket science or how to drive a fast car, or what am I supposed to do, right? By being very specific, one, you're being honest. Two, you're helping the person in saying, address those things and we are good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's where the empathetic side of it comes in, where it's you actually can have these. I think we often look at these difficult conversations as we might hurt someone's feelings, or it's just there's like that there can be no good outcome. But the reality is if you're having the conversation early enough, most of the time you may be able to work towards a solution, or you'll find out. You mentioned that it may be that employee is not excited about the job anymore. They have a health issue. Like, you may actually be able to uncover what the root of the problem is, and maybe they'll be relieved. They may have actual happiness that finally the conversation was that they thought should be had was happening, and you're able to find some mutually beneficial solution. So I do think that's the empathy and just frankly just doing it, getting to it, instead of putting that stuff off, will actually overall make those conversations that are difficult. It will make them maybe slightly easier. So I think I love that kind of approach that you're describing. What other aspects of leadership? The difficult conversations is certainly a big one. What other aspects of leadership do you think that oftentimes people in those roles are not prepared for, or may find out that they weren't prepared for?
Yeah. The book, as the title says, is the 4 streams of leadership. And why 4? It will become clear right now. I actually prepared a quick... don't know if everyone can see over here, but if not, I can describe this diagram where it places a picture of what the 4 streams are. Here at the very center, you have the beginning, which is the reservoir. It starts with yourself. Mm-hmm. How do you manage yourself, defining what is the culture of the team, right? The culture hates a vacuum. If you're not there establishing the culture, it will be established for you. How you go about defining identifying your strengths and your weaknesses, what are areas that you have to manage yourself. So it all begins with the reservoir of the streams, which is yourself. Then you have downstream. In downstream, you're going to be managing your team, you're going to be managing projects, and you're going to be managing day-to-day operations, right? How are you going to assemble the team and keep track of projects and so on. The third one is managing upstream. You're not managing in the sense of you telling your manager what to do, but you are analyzing projects, you are identifying how to keep things on track, you are setting the communication, because your manager also needs to make decisions. What information can you give them so they have the best possible information to make the right decision? If they're not getting the signal from you, they will not be able to act and make the right choice or the right decision. because the information will be missing. Last but not least, you're managing side stream. You are not building something in the vacuum. You're working with for example, a product manager, a legal team, a sales team, marketing team. Those are responsibilities you need to work on, right? So managing yourself, managing downstream, managing upstream, managing side stream. Those are the domains, and the subjects in those domains are the things you need to be aware, so you're prepared to do things well and to succeed in a position of leadership.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that diagram. I think that makes a lot of sense in terms of, all the different aspects of leadership that you need to be thinking about within your role, whatever role you're in. No, that's amazing. Well, Dalmo, I'm going to switch gears so we have some time to ask you the questions that I ask every guest. The first one is, of course, based on the name of the show being Know Your Why. So what is your why? We talked a little bit about our kids already, but I want to give you a chance to expand and kind of talk about your why, maybe your personal why, the why behind the book. I think there can be a lot there. So the floor is yours for that.
Absolutely. The why and the why behind the book is, as I was saying in the beginning, I was not prepared to be in a position of leadership. Then discovering and walking that journey myself, learning things, eventually you start talking with friends. They come and speak with you saying, what are you doing that this is working? And you identify one data point and then another data point. Then you figure out that the problems you were encountering are the problems many others are encountering. And if you have a framework that would work not only for you, but others, then why not put in a book format? Why not share it? It's a way of paying it forward, right? And say, here's what has been working for me. Here's what can work for you as well. And it's about getting into this position of being prepared to the job you have ahead of you, and not with filler stories. I like to joke a story of a sad unicorn that didn't have lollipops and stuff. You can tell that story, people will be emotionally connected to it, but then unless you have the same life experiences of the author of those stories, you will not be able to connect the dots and bring to your reality and say, how does that apply to me? So it makes you feel good, but it amounts to nothing in the end. That's why I opted not to include those stories and instead come up with a framework. Here's the theory, and here are examples. And those examples, you can apply them the day you get to see them, right? You go through the book, you read that. Oh, here's something interesting. I can apply that today. Great. Yeah. So that's where I see the book being not only that instrument that will prepare you, but will be that reference material that you keep on your table, not on a bookshelf, but you keep on your table because you're constantly going back and referencing the book, right? So that's my why.
Yeah. Well, and you kind of read my mind on, I was going to ask you, sort of at what stage do you think someone should be, sort of really digging into the book, in the sense that, is this early in their leadership journey, while they're once they've gotten to that position? It sounds like really could be all of the above, because you've framed it as more of a almost like a reference document or a textbook on leadership for people to kind of continue to reference. I don't want to inappropriately categorize your book, but it sounds to me like that's what you're sort of suggesting. Is that, do you have more that you would say to that?
I think you're right. Your statement is absolutely fair. When I was writing the book, I had 4 different personas in mind, 4 different audiences in mind. for those books. But I think the way you described it covers all of them. So the first audience are people who are individual contributors, who were transitioning into a position of leadership and found themselves unprepared, right?
Sure.
Perhaps before the transition or shortly after they get the book, and that will be one audience. A different one is people who landed in a position of leadership and they haven't found their bearings. They don't know exactly what to do. They're struggling in doing their job. Instead of quitting, perhaps going through the book will put you in a better position to continue on that journey. The third one would be leaders of leaders. So if you already have like one or more levels of management on your team, can I prepare my other leaders on the team to do a great job? Can I train them? Can I prepare them better? And the last but not least are students, right? They want to go beyond academic coursework and they want to already hit the ground running. They want to see something more tangible, more practical that they can apply the day they join the workforce.
Great. Good. Thank you for explaining that in a much clearer way than I described. I think that's perfect. So thank you. When people hear this and they want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to reach out?
One thing I wanted to say is that this is a decade in the making, and I really developed that love on helping people and see them benefiting from the contents of the book, learning the lessons and applying themselves. So here's my invitation to everyone listening. Go to dalmocirne.com. That's DALMOCIRNE.com. And there you can see not only a link for the book, but you can read other articles I publish like regularly, most on leadership and management. You can see links to other social networks and like on LinkedIn and Substack and X. You can also schedule a conversation with me. There's a calendar right there. You can pick a day that is available, schedule a conversation with me. Or in the contact page, you can just like send me an email. I reply to every single email. Send me a message if you want to learn a little bit more, if you have a question, if you want to see a more practical example, send me a message. I reply to every single one of them.
Fantastic. We'll definitely get that in the show notes so people can connect with you and reach out. Certainly they can can they get the book on Amazon, I would assume?
The book is coming up on March 10th, 2026.
Okay.
You can pre-order already.
Okay.
You can pre-order the book already, but it's coming up March 10th.
Well, good. I think probably this episode will actually probably air right before that comes out, I think, if I'm doing the math right. So that's great. That'll be good timing. Dalmo, thank you for coming on the show today. Thank you for sharing everything that you did with us. And, leadership is such an important topic, and I agree, with your premise that probably many of us are not prepared for a leadership role, despite landing in one. So I think having your book as a reference material will be a fantastic tool. So thank you so much for being here today and sharing everything that you did.
Absolutely. It has been an immense pleasure, Jason. This was a very fun conversation.
Awesome. Thank you. And folks listening, make sure you connect with Dalmo. Please like, rate, and review the show so we can continue to get great guests. And as always, thank you for listening.
Hey there, I am Dr. Jason Balara, and this is the Know Your Why podcast, where we explore the why behind success. Every week, I meet with real estate investors, veterinary entrepreneurs, mindset coaches, authors, and fitness professionals to uncover their why and how it drives them on the winding road to success. What is your why?